Today we're gonna take a look at Immortals of Aveum, the new single-player first-person magic shooter from Electronic Arts and the Sandin Studio. EA was kind enough to invite us to an early preview event, so big thanks to them for the opportunity, and to Zane from Zane's World for being able to physically travel there for me and capturing the footage that you're seeing throughout this video. We have a first look at all weapon types, gears, and early boss fights, as well as our initial impressions, so let's dive right in. In any case, Immortals comes with a pretty interesting, for the lack of a better word, spin to the first-person shooter genre. It's not like we get, well, first-person games, but instead of using weapons, we shoot magic from our hands every single day. So this is kind of like the whole gist of it, though there is, of course, a main narrative. The game is single-player, and there's also a progression system in place to keep you busy and essentially evolve your character over time. Now, in this game, you play as Jack, a Triarch, essentially a battle mage that can take full control of all three types of elemental magic in this universe, including the powers of life, chaos, and force. The ones that you see indicated by the different colors as he wields them in his right arm, and also the ones that you can constantly switch between for different effects, different powers, and all that kind of stuff. It quickly becomes clear that Jack is slowly but surely sucked into a centuries-old conflict between different warring factions, human factions that be, in their endless war for the control over magic. As you progress through the single-player campaign, you'll get to use these powers both to defeat incoming threats, navigate the environment, solve intricate puzzles, and evolve your character further via better loot and skill unlocks. I will say this right off the bat, the game is visually stunning. From character faces, facial animations, visual effects, even the environment, this is a really good looking game. Somehow the art style kind of reminds me a bit of Dragon Age, especially Inquisition, when looking purely at how the characters look like and the magical effects, mixed with a bit of Destiny here and there, and maybe some other games I'm missing right now, especially in terms of the action and the environments. Which I guess it makes sense to look nice given the fact that the game was fully developed in the latest Unreal Engine 5. Which is why, on top of the spectacular visuals, you're gonna get some really fluid first-person combat. Like, really, this game feels really good in terms of the combat and how you play it and how you feel the characters as you move through the environment. Let's talk a bit about the first-person combat and sequences, shall we? Because, like I said, you get control over the three types of magic or the three damage sources that you get in this game. This includes life, represented by color green, chaos in the color red, and then force with the color blue. Though for the most part, it still feels like you're essentially using guns when you're playing. It's just that instead of visually wielding a gun, you wield different gauntlets that behave slightly different. So each one of these offer different tactical advantages and will do slightly different things. You of course start with the blue magic via the Strike Bolt, a single shot long range attack which is great at sniping enemies from far away, so essentially a sniper. Green or life magic, this one lets you shoot storm shards, kinda like a magical auto assault rifle. I'm talking high rate of fire, long range, but lower per bullet damage. Chaos powers also have their own ability called Breach Fire, essentially a short-range shotgun that deals devastating damage to close-by enemies, but you can also eventually learn abilities to charge these up and get other powerful types of weaponry. On top of these, you also get various other tools to help you better deal with enemies, mostly stuff that lets you crowd control them. So the Lash is one of these that you get early, and this lets you pull enemies towards you, comes in quite handy for the moments that enemies tend to run away, stay too far, or when you just want to momentarily stun them. Blink, this is your teleport, it lets you just teleport in front of you a few meters away. It's great at escaping enemies and avoiding damage. And there is of course also the shield, which is there to protect against incoming damage, either by deflecting or by holding it up, which you can totally do even as you're shooting, so you can kinda do both things at the same time. As you progress through environments, you'll further use these powers to also solve puzzles, and there's actually quite a number of really interesting ways in which the game uses and utilizes all the different powers as you move through them. Nothing like too complicated either, because you can simply see and match the colors being displayed either when you're manipulating a door, when you're trying to uncover an entrance, or when you're just trying to make a way ahead. One thing that quickly becomes clear, and I say that quite ironically, is the fact that you tend to have a lot of magical particles and effects on the screen at any given moment, especially once you get all the powers and get a few upgrades going, essentially turning your entire screen into a magical effect simulator, which looks pretty, but it can be a bit distracting, especially when enemies tend to group up or tend to move all over the screen. There were certain moments when certain bosses were capable of quickly traversing these environments, and you could quickly get lost or unable to react in time because there were so many particles distracting you at one time. Speaking of things meant to distract you, yes, the game does feature a loot system. You will occasionally, well, actually quite often, stumble upon caches of loot and all sorts of containers that you will want to break to grab items from inside. The game does feature a progression system that indeed lets you further evolve with your character, better prepare for the challenges ahead, and also provide better and better drops as you progress. Now, in terms of the gear, this is split into different categories, including sigils, totems, rings, and bracers. Nothing in terms of armor from what I'm able to tell, but you are able to control the looks of the things that you see 99% of the time, which are basically your hands. So most of these are aimed towards equipping your hands either with the bracers or with the sigils, which provide or well channel the different powers that you get to use against enemies. Many of these you get to craft yourself by using the resources that you gather during the gameplay, but a lot of them also drop from enemies, so it's kind of like you do both of these at the same time. However, one concern I still have is the way the loot system looks like, because most of the items from this early event were pretty much containing just percentage increases to existing stats. Nothing too interesting, no effects that were like over the top, more complicated, or like just provide different types of effects. No, it was just increases to your existing stats. So this could be entirely possible due to the fact that the demo played somewhere around the start of the game, so who knows, maybe later on we might see something more interesting in terms of effects, but until then I'm a bit worried that loot seems a bit uninspired. It also makes it feel like the character progression is secondary in nature compared to the game's real premise, which is of course that of being an FPS or a first-person magic action game. So magic and action is what you're going to do most of the time, and progression and loot is going to be secondary. The game also features a skill tree. I believe there are about 80 or so unlockable perks here that you can invest your points in as you level up and progress. But for the most part, as you can obviously see, many of them are actually, again, just flat out buffs, percentage increases to existing abilities. Only the major nodes actually have a noticeable impact or change something in a significant enough manner to remember them. Otherwise, I don't think there's anything in there that will like just completely change your build up by just investing points into them. It's just that the major skills you unlock are done through usually like main story points, which is not actually a bad deal if the only thing you're looking for is just combat and action and having fun in the game. This kind of takes away the pressure of always fiddling with builds and always trying to figure out the best routes. In this case, you just like invest some of the points, get some flat out bonuses, and continue to have fun from that point on. Jump into the action, use your powers, and take down really bad and big enemies. Anyway, in terms of bugs, with this being a pre-release build, yeah, it did have some, but the game does still have a couple of months until release to flash them all out. For the most part, I think that all setups played it at 4K max settings, though that was on some pretty beefy setups, so just keep that in mind. Otherwise, gameplay, it looks quite promising so far, so looking forward to the full release and how it all pans out. This is it with the early impressions. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time.